The village in it with a map and a plan. No place too tiny for this determined man. Crossing the counties one by one, he'll see in every English corner a bit of history.
Welcome back to Harrogate again, everybody. Now behind me there you can see we have a railway line. Now did you know that at one point in history this railway line crossed the Great North Road and there was a level crossing? Well, this isn't that level crossing, this is the next one down the line, but I know where to find that crossing. We'll go and find it as we explore the very interesting parish of Allerton Mauleverer with Hopperton. Allerton Mauleverer with Hopperton, Elfwild's farm belonging to the Mauleverer family with Hooper's farmstead. Now here's a parish that's really engrossing, and not just for one specific reason. This one has one of the lengthiest names in all of England. It's called Allerton Mauleverer with Hopperton, and as that title suggests, there are two settlements here. They are Allerton and Hopperton. Hopperton is fairly easy to understand. It's a small hamlet that sits between the A59 and the old route of the A1. It was cut off from the latter thanks to the new route of the A1, meaning now it sits on a dead-end road. It has only one landmark of note, the old Mason's Arms. Allerton, though, has far more. Sitting in the middle of the parish almost is the huge Allerton Castle. It's the principal building of the Allerton Park estate, which has been owned by several people and families, including the Mauleverers themselves, at the time of the Norman conquest. Allerton obtained its distinguishing name from the family of Mauleverer, one of whom was named Richard. Although the family claimed to have come over from France with William the Conqueror, this is now believed to be based on a forged family tree of 1591. One of the later owners here was, for 3 years, Prince Frederick, the second son of King George III. He was the Duke of York, and it's thanks to his ownership of this estate that one building in particular can claim to be the origin of a very well-known nursery rhyme. And we've all sung it. This is what Allerton Mauleverer with Hopperton looked like at the turn of the 20th century, and essentially it's still the same now, save for the route of the A1. These days, that blasts its way through the parish in the form of a motorway, but here it was a normal looking road. The new route of the A1 has changed the layout of the parish's southern sections a bit. Hopperton isn't accessible from the old route anymore, or from the new route either. In this episode, we'll go in search of an old railway station, which used to stand on the A1 before the new road came along. This is what Allerton had to its name in these times. I've only focused in on Allerton here and not Hopperton because this is where all the action is. There are two buildings to focus on here, St Martin's Church and Allerton Castle, but note, the castle isn't marked here with a name. That's because from 1805 to 1983, a span of 178 years, this was not known as Allerton Castle like it is today. On this map, had it have been marked, it would have been called Stourton House after the family who resided within it at the time. They added the domestic chapel you can see marked here. And so this is what the place looks like now. Spot the difference because you really can't. Allerton has barely altered, and in actual fact the only things that have changed from then to now are internal. The route around this one won't be complicated, by the way. A lot of this episode will be done by using the car. We'll be driving through Hopperton to begin with before heading into Allerton. With this being an estate, there's only one public road we can walk on. That's this, outside the front of the castle and the church. We'll then drive again to find the old railway station, and before we leave we'll also be heading up the A168 to catch a folly within Allerton Park. In all, Allerton Mauleverer with Hopperton is quite the place, and one that will live long in your minds after we're done here. So let's get started with a drive through Hopperton. Now these days this little hamlet lies on a dead-end road, but that wasn't always the case, as we saw on the maps. You could drive through this at one time and join the Great North Road. Not any longer. These days you can only go as far as the railway line, where the road comes to a stop. You can still walk it if you cross the railway, but as far as a vehicle is concerned, that's your lot. Hopperton has always been a really small place, never anything major. Until 1958, Hopperton had its own railway station next to a level crossing, but it wasn't the crossing you can find at the end of the village. It was at the next crossing down the line towards Harrogate, where the railway crossed the original route of the A1. We'll see where that was later in this video. And the A1 is the reason why Hopperton is now a dead end. When it was upgraded to become the motorway it is today, it changed the landscape around here considerably, cutting off the original route from Greythorn Lane. Hopperton has never had anything that could possibly enable it to be termed a village. There's no church here, no shops, and no school. There's also no pub, but there was until very recently. It was called the Mason's Arms, and the building is still very much standing. Let's see it. The Mason's Arms closed in 2020 and was turned into this attractive dwelling. This is a 200-year-old building, and being located in a quiet dead-end village in its latter days, it wasn't always busy. That said, being within easy reach of the A59, it did still pull in a few punters. It opened and closed several times throughout its life. The last time it reopened after a period of closure was in June 2015. At that time, it had just reinvented itself as a food-orientated pub. There was a casual drinking area too, though. At quiet times, the pub often closed early. Okay, that's us done with Hopperton for now, but we will return here later to find the other level crossing, the one that went over the Great North Road. In the meantime, though, we've got Allerton to explore, and explore is the right word because I can't really do much filming here because it's a private estate. Let's go and find it. It's got one of the most impressive buildings in all of Yorkshire. So that's really all there is to Hopperton. It's not the largest place we'll ever see, is it? Neither is ALLERTON MAULEVERER, but the history of this place far outweighs its small stature. Allerton is known for several reasons, and as we drive into the place, we'll briefly cite them. By far the biggest reason is also the biggest building it has, the super impressive Allerton Castle. It sits in a massive parkland which includes several other buildings, such as the Temple of Victory, a folly on a distant hill. The village itself, though, is fairly well known for its church. Allerton's church is dedicated to St Martin and was first built on this, its current site, by a member of the Mauleverer family in the late 12th or early 13th century. The present church was remodelled in the 1740s by Richard Arundel, the heir to the Mauleverers and MP for Knaresborough. Now it presents a very neo-Norman style, so much so that in 1848 the church was described by commentators of the day as an ancient cruciform structure, despite the fact it was only a century since it was restored. In 1971, this church was declared redundant. In 1985, the churchyard wall and the piers of the church were awarded Grade 2 listings. There are two burial grounds here next to the church. One, which is only accessible from the western end of the site next to the road, is reserved solely for Roman Catholic burials. St Martin's is constructed primarily of ashlar, but there's limestone elsewhere. The east window has 5 lights and is in the perpendicular style. The tower has 3 stages and a pyramid-shaped roof with a weather vane. It all looks fabulous from the outside, but it's just as good inside. Inside the church is a vase-shaped font, a 2-decker pulpit with a sounding board, and panelled box pews. Between both the nave and the chancel, and between the nave and the transepts, are iron gates. It's all crowned by a hammer beam roof. On the chancel arch is a painting of Moses and Aaron. In the north transepts are 4 effigies. 2 of them are wood depicting knights with crossed legs dating from the late 13th century. The other 2 are in alabaster. Dating from 1745, they represent Sir John Mauleverer and his wife. There's also the large tomb of Mary Thornton, who died in 1800. It's otherwise quite a plain interior in this church. There's not much on the walls. However, I have found one tablet that is of note. It's this one here. Now this was erected by members of the Royal Canadian Air Force No. 6 Bomber Group in appreciation of the use of this church for divine worship between 1943 and 1945. Excellent stuff. So I'll just quickly show you the rest of the inside of the church. Up here is the chancel with a massive east window that's letting in loads of light, but as you can see, very plain in here as well. Nothing on the walls. And then go this way, back out. Much darker at this end of the church, but there are still quite a few windows. You see there's 3 up there, and then there's another one over to this side, and then you've got all the ones down the aisle as well, down the aisles, plural, and then out into the village, and that's really it. Now, as well as the church, which, don't get me wrong, is a fabulous building, Allerton is famous for what's over there behind those trees. I'm talking, of course, about the magnificent Allerton Castle. Allerton Castle is by far and away the building that's best known in these parts. It's hardly surprising, really. The place is huge. It sits in Allerton Park, but somewhat confusingly, the castle is also known as Allerton Park itself sometimes. It's a Grade 1 listed 19th century Gothic or Victorian Gothic house. The Allerton Castle we see here today was rebuilt by the architect George Martin of Baker Street in London between 1843 and 1853. Primarily a luxury wedding venue now, it also features a late 20th century block which is used for education and other corporate functions. To understand the extremely deep history of this place, we have to go back to the Norman Conquest, when the Allerton estate belonged to the Mauleverer family, the very same mob that gave this village its name. The Mauleverers were here for a very, very long time. When Richard Mauleverer died heirless in 1692, Allerton passed to his wife, who left the estate to Richard Arundel, her son by her second marriage. It was Arundel who remodelled the church in its Norman Revival style in 1745, and the interior of that remains unaltered to this day. Following Arundel's death in 1758, Allerton passed to his widow, Lady Frances, and on her death in 1769, it was then in the hands of her nephew, Viscount Galway. We don't know what Allerton Castle would have looked like in these times, but by 1780, we definitely did. Viscount Galway's son was Robert Monckton Arundel, the 4th Viscount. He rebuilt the house in 1780 to designs which had been attributed to William Lindley. He only lived in it for 6 years before selling it on. In 1786 it belonged to Prince Frederick, the Duke of York, the second son of George III. The Duke of York employed Henry Holland in 1788 to remodel the interior of the house, but again he didn't stay long enough to really enjoy it. He sold the estate in 1789 to Thomas Thornton, and as we know, Mary Thornton lies in the church, so solidifying that family connection. The estate changed hands again in 1805 when it was purchased by Edward, the 17th Baron Stourton. His family owned the estate from 1805 until 1983, meaning they were the second longest owners of Allerton after only the Mauleverers. Members of the family were known as the Lords Mowbray. During their time, Allerton Castle became Stourton House, and it gained several buildings, including a chapel built in a Gothic style. However, they were destructive as well as constructive. In 1843, they demolished the Georgian house and engaged George Martin to build the present one. The only time during the ownership of the Stourtons that it was not lived in by them was during World War II, when it was used by the Royal Canadian Air Force. The family ceased to live there after the death of the 22nd Baron Stourton, marking a change in ownership for the first time in 178 years. The house was sold to Dr. Gerald Rolfe, an American businessman. The purchase included the house and gardens, but not the park, which was instead retained by Lord Mowbray. Rolfe set about renovating the building to the highest standards, filling the house with furniture and splendour. A severe fire in January 2005 caused substantial damage to the northern aspect of the castle, including the main dining room, the library, the rear entrance hall, 2 bedrooms, their adjoining dressing rooms and bathrooms, and the servants' wing. These, though, have now been restored. The estate is now run by the Gerald Arthur Rolfe Foundation for Historic Preservation and Education, and its rooms are available to hire for corporate events and weddings. So, if you come to the castle these days, what should you expect to see? Well, a short drive leads past a late 18th century stable block before you're confronted with the huge, and I mean colossal, Tudor Gothic Victorian building. The main block is built of a dark-coloured stone with a high tower rising above the entrance porch. The interior of Allerton Castle was designed on a vast scale, with late Gothic decoration in the style of Pugin's work on the Palace of Westminster. The early Victorian craftsmanship and the recent restoration work are of the highest quality. The Great Hall is one of the highest baronial rooms in England at almost 70 feet high, and it's lit from a huge lantern which rises from the centre of the main block. It's adorned by galleried landings whose walls are hung with full-length portraits including works by Michael Dahl and William Dobson. The principal staircase opens off the Great Hall under a vaulted ceiling which is hung with portraits of the Mowbray and Stourton families. The library and dining room occupy the northern side of the hall. On the huge table, original to the house, are candelabra dating from 1848. The drawing room has a magnificent plaster ceiling. On the walls are portraits by Michael Dahl and Charles Jervis, and vast Rococo mirrors made for Melton Constable Hall in Norfolk. The ballroom in the west of the house was decorated by Dr. Rolfe with a plaster vaulted ceiling. Then, of course, there's St Mary's Chapel, added in 1807. It was probably designed by Peter Atkinson in the Gothic style. It's constructed of a mixture of brown and cream brick and has a slate roof. It was given a Grade 2 listing separate from the castle itself in 1985. Now we're off to find the former Hopperton railway station, and to do that we have to cross under the A1 using the A168. When the A1 was upgraded, its old route was chopped up into pieces, often leaving loops and dead ends here and there. We've seen plenty of those already on our travels. This is another one. It contains 2 landmarks which used to be beside the A1. The station is one of them, but there's a second. It was a pub called the New Inn, which relied a lot on passing trade. The pub building still stands, but it's been several years since it served any customers. So here's the railway line and the level crossing where it bisected the A1. Can you imagine now if there was a level crossing on the A1 here? It would cause absolute chaos. On the crossing was Hopperton railway station, which served both Allerton and Hopperton from 1848 to 1962. The station opened initially as Allerton under the management of the East and West Yorkshire Junction Railway. It had some goods facilities which were installed on the northern side of the main line, featuring a cattle dock and 6 coal cells. Flag signals controlled movements within the yard. In 1911, census data revealed that the station served a population of 457, and statistics from the North Eastern Railway showed that it was dealing with around 6,000 passengers every year. That sounds like a lot, but when compared to the 15,000 that used Cattle Station, it was minuscule. Having said that, Allerton Station was primarily used for goods traffic, so the figures didn't matter too much. It dealt with barley, potatoes and livestock, all of which were dispatched from the station. Coal was the main inbound commodity received via rail. In 1925, it changed its name to avoid confusion with Allerton Station in Liverpool. From then on until its closure, it became known as Hopperton. It survived the nationalisation of the railways, but saw a significant reduction in its services by the summer of 1958. The timetable of that period shows only 2 trains to York during the week and only 1 to the city on Saturdays. The station was therefore one of 4 on the line to close by that September, the others being Hesse, Marston Moor and Goldsborough. Goods traffic stopped in 1962. Now, the last thing to cover in this episode isn't actually in the parish, but it's close enough that it makes no difference. Then again, it wouldn't have made any sense to cover it in Flaxby, the one it actually belongs to, because it lies within Allerton Park. We're off to find the Temple of Victory. The Temple of Victory is a folly, or more accurately, a folly gazebo. It sits in a very prominent position on a hill, and it can be seen from both the A168 and the A1. It has an octagonal plan and is built of stone, with an eaves cornice, a plain parapet, and a lead domed roof. Internally, there's only 1 story and a basement, but on 3 sides of the latter are doorways with fanlights and wrought iron balconies. The main entrance is on the southwestern side and is approached by 2 flights of steps with wrought iron railings. It was given a Grade 2 listing in 1966. So what exactly was this used for? Unfortunately, nobody really knows for sure. Its history is a little vague. Although prominent on its hill, not far from the Great North Road, the temple was seldom noted by any passers-by. Ideas usually thrown around include maybe a banqueting hall of some sort. By the middle of the 19th century, the temple's original role had fallen out of fashion, and as is so often the case with redundant garden buildings, it was put to work as a dwelling house. Throughout the second half of the century, the structure was a family home for estate workers. Now, a local legend claims that its construction atop a hill inspired the nursery rhyme The Grand Old Duke of York. Now, I'm sure we've all sung that at some point in our lives, but for the sake of completeness, I thought I would include it here. And yes, I will sing it myself. Oh, the grand old Duke of York, he had 10,000 men. He marched them up to the top of the hill, and he marched them down again. When they were up, and when they were down, and when they were only halfway up, they were neither up nor down. And this is how the temple claimed to be connected to the rhyme. When Prince Frederick, the Duke of York, bought the Allerton estate in 1786, it said that he used the folly to host a day of grand entertainment for his tenants, local families, and the rest of the neighbourhood. These people are believed to have been the 10,000 men in the rhyme, and that they were marched up the hill to the folly and back down again afterwards. There is also a second theory, which again might hold a bit of water, but only if the Duke himself built this folly. That theory goes that the 10,000 men were the workers who built the temple. You can just imagine the ant-like activity of the men constantly ascending and descending the gigantic mound. I will stress though, these are only legends. There's no proof that the rhyme ever began as a result of this. You won't be surprised to learn that other hills across the country also claim this honour, and so the origins of the song have been much debated and remain unclear. Marching 10,000 soldiers up and down a hill for no apparent reason has, though, become proverbial for futile action. Well, I don't know about 10,000 men, but I do know there are still more than 8,000 parishes for me to visit across several hills. Let's leave that legend alone and head to the next one. I'll be back in Harrogate again next weekend. See you soon. Now, just before I go, remember, this video is part of a huge project to visit every civil parish in England. That's more than 10,000. These routes are pre-planned, and due to time constraints, I can't cover every detail or walk down every street. Please don't complain if this video missed something out. I pronounce names how I choose to. I am very aware that local dialect may vary, and I don't take kindly to criticism about this. You've been warned. It's impossible to know everything too. If this video was terrible, make your own. If you're a regular watcher of The Village Idiot, you're not the only one. If you've got a small business, why not use my videos to advertise it? Leave a comment below if you're interested. And finally, thanks for watching this episode, everybody. Give us a like and a subscribe if you've enjoyed this episode, and share it with your friends and relatives. It all helps to keep this mission going. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as The Village Idiot, and I'm out.